Welcome back to Cowlitz River Restoration. Here's a fun desk I refinished. I got this as a gift from a client. I started off by sanding it, and sanding it, and sanding it, and sanding it, and sanding it. There was a lot of sanding. With a couple different grits, I used a 180 and I used a 220, and I sanded and sanded and sanded and sanded and sanded for a long time. So anyways, this was a gift. It was kind of like a tip from a client that comes to me pretty frequently. I'm super fortunate to have the best clients in the world. So they gifted this to me so I could flip it on the marketplace. I sanded off the front of 2 different drawers because I got all kinds of tricks up my sleeve. So then I am a big fan of the pour and wipe method. So I poured on some stain. I used, I think it was a walnut stain on the top. And I just put that pretty liberally all over with the whole pour and smear. My first pour was enough to cover the whole front side, and then I needed to pour a little bit more for the back. If you're doing this in your house like I was, you're going to want to crack some windows for ventilation, or you might pass out. After staining the top, I stained the front of the 2 drawers that, actually it was 4 drawers that I had sanded the fronts of so that they would match the top. Because I happen to love wood and black together. I think they go together so well. So that's kind of what I was playing on. And the knobs that were originally on this piece were gold, and I'm gonna leave them gold because I think it's gonna look awesome together, and you will see. Just stay tuned. With the drawers, I did more of a dip and wipe method. I don't know if I would do a pour. So after the stain set, I really like to do a paint. It's kind of like black washing, you could call it. I've also heard people calling it like a tinted stain, but I do it with paint, and I like to brush it on and wipe it off and brush it on and wipe it off because I feel like it creates a really cool distressed wood look. So it's not all flat anyways, but I just like the way it looks. So it adds a little bit of variation that I like. So that's what I did. I went ahead and I used some watered down charcoal paint, and I wiped it on and I wiped it off. When I'm using black paint on wood, I like to prime first. So I just used a charcoal chalk paint to prime. I cut in all the drawers using an angle brush, and I cut in around the top of the desk using an angle brush. You'll see that in a minute. But I like the way that chalk paint works as a primer for my dark colors. I've also used it with blues that I've done and greens that I've done. It just kind of helps the paint have something to really grab onto. And what I like about chalk paint too is that I feel like the coverage is pretty darn good. So I don't have to try to sand it down for the paint to have something to grab onto. It grabs onto the chalk paint really well. I'm using a cheap $5 brush that I pick up at my local hardware store. I love it. I love that if I forget to wash my paintbrush, I'm not out $1 million. And I love that it gives me the control that I need to cut in. I like that the handle is nice and short. So if I'm working in a tight space, I don't have the handle banging into things. I just feel like it gives me a really good amount of control over my paint. So I'm gonna keep using this brush for the time being. I really like it. It's awesome. I mean, really, it's a $5 brush, and I use them until they cannot be used anymore. Here's the top portion of my little desk. It's like the little stationary piece. I just wiped it down really good, and now I'm going to prime it with my chalk paint, my charcoal chalk paint. And this is a perfect example of why those short-handled brushes are so awesome when you're working in tight spaces. I don't have my handle banging into things, and I can really reach all those little nooks and crannies inside, and it gives me the amount of control that I need to be successful in getting a good amount of coverage of paint on my piece. Next, I'm going to use a Rust-Oleum latex paint, and I'm going to paint the whole base of this desk. What I like about the Rust-Oleum latex paint is that I can get it at any hardware store. It's easy to touch, like I feel like the durability is good. It's not super expensive. If somebody takes home furniture and it gets scraped, I mean, it's super easy for them to just go out and buy a quart of paint and touch it up. I think it's great paint, and I like working with it. So there. I did 2 coats of this matte black latex Rust-Oleum paint. Now, what I can say about this matte black is it doesn't really go on matte. It has a sheen to it. But once I put my finishing wax on, it does make it more matte. But I would say that it's more of a satin than a matte. But again, that's totally fine with me. It makes it easier to clean. So I love it. I've tried some other black paints on the market, but I feel like I just like the way this one has turned out for me. I feel like it's consistent, and I trust the color, I trust the durability, and I've worked with it a bunch, so I'm gonna keep doing it. If I were going to make one suggestion when using this paint, it would be to use a primer, like I did here with the charcoal, because otherwise it goes on kind of streaky. But even some of the most expensive paints that I've seen people use go on streaky. So, I mean, it is what it is. Use a primer. After my 2 coats of paint had dried, I went back over just around the corners with some leftover 220 grit sandpaper that I had. And again, it was super light. I didn't go crazy with the sandpaper. I just went around some of the areas where there is like definition, I guess. Just like around the creases, around the corners, around the edges, just to give it a little bit of visual interest. So it's not all just flat. Sanding went super quick because again, I didn't do a lot of it. So after I was done sanding, I just wiped it all down really good to get all of the particles off before I went over it with a finishing wax that I love. It's by Minwax, and I just started using it. And it's for wood and also paint. And I love the way it goes on, and the durability is bomb. I'm telling you what. I had a table I refinished with this wax on it, and the table flipped off of another table and clattered. It was a calamity to the ground. And it didn't even, not even a scuff, not even a scratch. I was so impressed. So I love this finishing wax that I'm using. You can get it at the hardware store. I picked mine up at Home Depot. It's fantastic. And I went ahead and went over this entire desk with this product. In other words, I highly recommend it. So what I did with the drawers is I went ahead and I dipped and wiped with a lint-free rag. Well, rag, it's an old t-shirt that I cut up, and it seems to be working just fine. I started to do it on the top, but then I wasn't thrilled with the pace that I was able to keep doing that. So I went ahead and went and grabbed one of my wax brushes and used that to go over the top as well as the whole base with my wax brush. And I picked up this wax brush on Amazon. It was less than 20 bucks. It came with another little one that's really great for small areas, or also sometimes I like to use it when I'm antiquing, and I love it. I love my wax brush. It works so great. And it didn't cost me an arm and a leg, but it gets the job done. It's wonderful. Highly recommend. Now remember that when you're working with this wax, a little goes a long way. You only need a very thin layer to seal your piece. If you put it on too thick, it will take forever to dry, if at all dry. And also what I've experienced is if I put it on too thick, it can also make the color come out uneven, or sometimes it'll leave like a white residue. So less is more. Less is more. One of my very favorite parts about working on a piece is when I get to put all the drawers back in and they slide in smoothly. That makes me so happy. And then putting on the hardware and getting all the finishing touches done, it is my favorite. It feels so good. But mostly when the drawers go in smoothly. There's nothing like refinishing a piece and then having the drawers not slide in, but this one wasn't that way. It was so perfect. And it turned out so cute. I can't wait to list it on the marketplace. Can't wait for it to be in its new home. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, come back. More will be revealed. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.